So hi YouTube, this is my first video, and today I'll be talking about medical parasitology. So I want to start this video off with the word parasitism. So what is parasitism? It is the relationship in which one organism, let's call that the host, is injured through the actions of the other organism, which is the parasite. Now, there are different kinds of parasites, but the two most common, or if you can classify them, they could be an obligate parasite, which means that they cannot survive without the host's body, or host being dead. They cannot survive without them being alive. So there's also facultative parasites, which exists in a free living state, uh, and they have like this commensal state where the parasite is benefiting from the host, but they're not really harming the they're not really harming the body. So uh, it's got like this symbiotic relationship, but uh, let's not confuse it with that term, the symbiotic relationship. So, moving forward, an accidental or incidental host refers to infection of a host that is not usually uh, the host for a parasite. So it's accidental. So what does that mean? Like the parasites could infect someone accidentally. There are some parasites that infect like the pig, such as Balantidium species, where they infect the pig, uh, and through that pig, the parasite could also infect the human. So, despite the parasite being specifically made for the pig, but more on that later. So, the parasite, it could have has different reproductive phases. So um, you have like a sexual reproductive phase. You also have the asexual reproductive phase. Um, so I just want to state this right now, but I won't dwell on it further. But sexual reproductive phases occur in the definitive host, while asexual reproductive phases uh, occurs in the intermediate host. To put it into simpler words, is that when the sexual reproductive phase is occurring, it's the definitive host. So that's the host that will, well, in my own terms, it that's where they will uh reproduce more often, and they have more activity in that host. While if it were in an asexual reproductive phase, um, it will occur in the intermediate host, then it would transfer to the definitive host where sexual reproduction would occur. Now, in the to dwell a little bit more again, in intermediate host, they serve as a carrier. So it's present in the host, but there is no signs or symptoms. Uh, and they're also called vectors. There are also like carriers that are called vectors, which could also serve as a mode of transmission of the disease or the parasite. Now, I want to go to how in medical parasitology they are able to like identify these parasites. So, let's start with the specimen collection, and one of the most common fluids that we collect, or what doctors would collect, is your stool samples or your poop. And just to give some more factuals about this, it's actually not really important to me, but I think you have to know that the general rule is that before therapy, a minimum of 3 fecal specimens should be collected. And when you're collecting these stool samples, you should avoid any preservatives, any mineral oils that would decrease the motility of the trophozoite. What is a trophozoite? It's like another form of the parasite. And I'll go further in that later. So, uh, and when we collect specimens, increasing the number of samples will enhance the findings. We tend to monitor it uh, through days actually. So uh, we have to collect the specimens or use 2 specimens in alternate days instead of those collected daily. So uh, so yeah, like the more we collect your stools throughout your stay in the hospital, let's say, we could monitor the how, let's say, when you're getting treated for that parasite, if the treatment is working, or uh, when we suspect that there's a parasite, we could see that if the number of eggs, cysts, oocysts are increasing or decreasing. How is your body interacting with the medical treatment, or how is the infectivity getting worse or better? Sorry, if the infectivity, correction, is getting worse, I mean. So um I said about, or I mentioned about the oocyst. So it could have, again, like, there are different that I mentioned, sorry, I've mentioned about the oocyst and the trophozoites. So there are different kinds of like forms that the parasite can take form. And just to name a few, you have your amoebas, your flagellates, ciliates, uh, coccidia. Um, there's also sporozoa. There's also hemoflagellates. So those are very different kinds of um, parasites, to just name a few. And but one of the things that are common in those forms is, so I want to dwell in cyst form. So where do you usually find the cyst? What is a cyst, first of all? The cyst is more like, it's like an egg. It's not yet really active. It's not really giving out symptoms. It's like a baby. It's not really doing so much to the world. It's just there, you know. But it needs to, like, while it's inside like an organism, or let's say a vector, it needs to transform, which is the trophozoite form. And the trophozoite form usually can be found in liquid stools. um and before I dwell, or like the before I dwell into it more, these stool samples, we place it into a preservative. So one of the common preservatives that we use is polyvinyl alcohol. You can also preserve it in formalin, but that's a different topic. But this PVA, polyvinyl alcohol, it's made. It's a combination of Chaudin's fixative, so that's mercuric chloride and ethyl alcohol, with polyvinyl alcohol, glycerin, uh, and glacial acetic acid. Preserves, again, the cyst and the trophozoite's morphological characteristics. So uh, let's say you actually fixated this specimen, right? This stool specimen. We then visualize it in microscopic examination. So, of course, before you use the microscope, you have to calibrate it, and calibration is very important. Even though it's not really uh, emphasized too much, but it's really important because whenever you're trying to identify a parasite, it has to fit the description, the size, and it's very difficult, especially if it was in direct smears, where you have to know what how to distinguish one parasite from another from the egg. And uh, based on my experience and also what I've seen, it's very difficult to determine, like, oh, this parasite is the parasite, from the other parasite. So of course there are methods to distinguish between the two, but again, of course, if you're living in a country that has uh, lack of funding, there's uh, there's gonna be times where you have to uh, make a good inference of what that parasite is. So that wraps up for today's video. Bye.